The Foundation framework provides a number of classes relating to and handling collections of data. In this lesson, we'll look at two of them, NSArray and NSMutableArray. Arrays are ordered collections of objects. Now, this is a heterogeneous collection, meaning that a single NSArray instance can store an arbitrary collection of objects. So let's create a new NSArray. And there's a variety of different ways we can create one, but this is a more common approach. We'll use this ArrayWithObjects method. And we'll pass in a list of strings terminated with a nil value. I can run that and see these values get printed out of the console. Once I have an array, I often need to find the individual elements within there. So I can use the objectAtIndex method. So if I want to get out the value John, I can ask for the objectAtIndex 0. If I want to get out the value Paul, I can ask for the objectAtIndex 1. I can log this out to the console. And I can see those two individual values. Now to iterate through, I have a couple different approaches to how I can iterate through these elements. I can either use a standard C for loop, so I'd say for int I equals 0, and while I is less than the count of elements that I have in this array, keep incrementing the I variable. And each iteration through the loop just asks for the object at that index. Objective-C also provides a more simplified version of a for loop. So here we can just say for NSString name in Beatles, and then log out that name. So this will iterate through each element in that collection and print it to the console. I can also ask an array if it contains a particular value. So I can ask the array, do you contain a particular object? So I'll use the containSObject method. And if this test returns a true result, it will return the string yes. Otherwise, I'm going to return the string no. I should see a string that says yes. It can also be useful sometimes to know what index a particular object is at. So I can use its indexOfObject method. So I can ask for the indexOfObject George. And since this is the third element in my list, I should see a value of 2 returned here. We run this, and there it is. NSArray is an immutable type, meaning that once it's created, it can't change. There is also a subclass called NSMutableArray that does allow us to add and remove elements from a list. So I can create an NSMutableArray. Once again, I have a number of ways I can do this, but a convenient form in this particular case would be to use the ArrayWithArray. So I'll pass in my original array into this initializer, and this will return a mutable version of that array. So I might want to add a few additional people to this collection. So Brian Epstein, their manager, George Martin, the producer, and Stuart Sutcliffe, the original bass player. And then I can iterate through these values in a manner similar to what we did above. So I can see those additional values now printed to the console. Now, Stuart Sutcliffe unfortunately never made it to the fame and glory of the rest of the Beatles, so we might want to remove him from our list. Since he was the last element I added, we can just simply call this RemoveLastObject method. And Brian Epstein, due to his unfortunate demise, was replaced at some point, so I could ask for the index where he falls within that array, and then replace that object at that particular index with this new string value. So if I run this again, I'll now see that Stuart Sutcliffe is no longer part of the array, and Brian Epstein has been replaced with Apple Corks. So arrays are heavily used throughout the Cocoa frameworks. In fact, it would be difficult to get very far without them. So I'd certainly recommend taking the time to learn the ins and outs of NSArray and NSMutableArray, as you'll greatly rely on them while you're doing iOS development.